We've put a lot of work into restoring a car, and now it's ready for epoxy. But doing a job like this is 90% prep and 10% actual work. And at the same time, we're gonna be doing some seam sealer, but in order to do this and have a successful job, there's a lot of crucial steps that have to be done. And we have to do these steps so our epoxy doesn't fail. And the best part is we've never done this before, so this will be a first for us. My name is Trooper Max, and I'm restoring a car that's been off the road since 1977. But I've never done this before. I've taken the time to do my research, and I'm building the car of my dreams, hoping to inspire others to do the same. Look at that ugly mess, eh? That's a lot going on. A year of cutting and sanding and repairs and all this stuff, a lot of surgery on this car, but she's solid. She's almost ready for paint. Now, minus the outside shell, but we're not doing that today. Today we're going inside. We gotta start getting that ready for paint. But if you look inside right now, it doesn't look like it's ready for paint because there's a couple things we gotta do. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. All right, so I got a really crappy looking floor pan in front of me here. Oh my God, like look at all this. I've had so many problems on this thing. I never expected to have to do this many repairs. Had I known about this, I would have replaced the whole floor, which is what I should have done in the first place. But can't go back now. I guess the cool thing about this is I have the challenge of making something that looks so bad look as good as possible. Maybe we can make it look pretty good, I don't know. I've got a couple ideas what we could do here. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to take a grinder with a flap disc and cut down some of the welds. I had done that before and then I sealed it with Osfil. However, since then I've had to actually chop open the back a couple more times. So anytime that happens, you can expect to have to do some repair work, and at the same time, it just showed me that at least I shouldn't do any of this stuff before I've taken everything off the car. I didn't think taking the rear end off the car would have me cutting this thing open, but that's what happened. So I had to cut it open, and now I gotta repair everything. So first thing I'm gonna do is grab that grinder, let's shave everything down nice and smooth. I got some welds here that I've been doing repair work. I did go all the way around, so most of it's done, so I'm pretty happy with it. But there are some areas I missed, like the firewall. Could use a little touching up, so we're gonna be doing that. So first thing I'm gonna be using is just a grinder. Grinder with a flap disc attachment. This works really well. This is pretty much the most effective way to do it. I don't use a grinding stone because it's rather quite crude, so this is just more forgiving, gives a better finish, and it's easier to work with. Plus, it's a lot more efficient. The second tool that's really good is using an air belt sander with a 40 grit. Now this doesn't go very long. You only get a minute or two, maybe a couple more sometimes, and then you got to change the belt. So I try to use this minimally, but this gets it in all the areas I can't reach. Just these two tools will give me the ability to actually finish the job. So that's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna grab the grinder, suit up, and let's cut these welds down. Look who we got. Look who's homesick here today. It's Bobby's. All right, so one of the things I like to do is I clean up all the garbage because it gets messy, so I stop a lot. Yeah, I got a helper today. Bobby's is here helping out.
Bryce is cleaning things up.
All right, here, I'll make a little pile and you clean it up. There we go.
Okay.
Good job, Bobby's.
Bryce is gonna make a big pile.
Yeah.
For himself.
All right, good job, Bobby's.
The truck is here again.
Oh, the garbage truck is here again. We got more for the garbage truck. Check it out right here. There you go.
Okay, here we go.
Thanks, buddy. It's awesome to get help. So we're at the stage now where we're just about ready to start laying stuff down, but the problem is there's actually some rust in some areas. Even though I put asphalt, some of the rust came back. I'm not really sure why. It's only in some areas, especially in this area here. So all I'm gonna do is take a drill. I'm gonna take the rust off in the areas where there's a lot, right here. All gone. I'm just gonna go and remove the rest of the rust, then we can move on.
Okay. And Bobby's is taking the dirt out.
And Bobby's is taking the dirt out. You know, you don't need the blasting. We're done with that. We're done with the sanding. Now, what we gotta do is we gotta vacuum everything. So we're gonna use this vacuum now. All right, so we're at the point now where everything's shaved down, everything's sanded, we're ready to start putting products on. But now, before we just start grabbing products and slapping them on, I really gotta understand what the conditions are, what I'm trying to achieve, and which products make sense. Because when I was looking this stuff up, when it comes to, you know, different types of Bondo, whether it's regular Bondo or whether it's fiberglass reinforced, whether you paint first, do you put Bondo on first, all these things, you look it up and there's so many different answers. You'll get somebody asking a question on a message board and you get 4 different answers, so it got really confusing. So it took a while to really break it down, and I think I kind of figured out what makes sense for me. Now, there's always more than one way to do it, but the biggest thing that people have been talking about is, do you put epoxy primer first or do you put your Bondo first? And the answer can be one or the other, actually, because it depends on the product. So first of all, the biggest difference is the types of Bondo you have. So this one's the fiberglass reinforced. So the fiberglass reinforced is much stronger and it's apparently supposed to be completely waterproof. Then the other one is the filler. So this is a fast dry Bondo, doesn't have the fiberglass in it. And the difference is, for the fiberglass, they say to actually have bare metal. You don't want any sort of epoxy primer because it won't adhere properly. And when it comes to this one, well, if you put on your Bondo on bare metal, people get rust from underneath because there's actually properties within this that make metal rust. So if there's any sort of rust there and oxidization, it's just gonna keep rusting underneath. So you actually want epoxy primer before your filler. So that's the biggest difference I found. So whether, you know, one way is better than another, I'm not sure. I've never done it before, but I'm just going based off what I've seen. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be first using this one. We're going to be using the fiberglass reinforced, and we're going to use it for all areas that are structural, where there's deflection. So the floor itself, it moves. When you step on it, you could see it moving. This has a lot more flexibility and strength than the regular Bondo. So I want something that's strong for the bottom. Now, if it's something else, like if we're filling in areas like this, like there's a whole bunch of damage here I'd like to fix, well, we'll just use the regular one. So we're gonna have to kind of do it in 2 stages. We're gonna have to first use this one, and then we're gonna have to epoxy, and then we're actually gonna be putting on seam sealer, and we'll get into that later. And then we paint, and then we put on this one. So it's kind of a big process. There's a lot of products, and based on what we're doing, we have to know the order. There is so much work involved in getting this ready. You know, it's been a year of just sanding this car. I don't want to mess up just because I didn't read the instructions or I didn't do my research on how to do this stuff. So I did as much research as I could just to be ready, and spoke with some experts. So first of all, Cartage Classic. This guy's awesome. So Richard, his channel, he's really been helping me out. He kind of, you know, gave me the scoop in terms of what works best and what doesn't. So that's been a really good channel. So he's been very helpful with that. So I know you've heard Richard's name here before, and you're going to hear it again because he's awesome what he does. So these are the type of people that really helped out on this project. The other person that helped out was the channel The Home Shop. So this guy's a paint expert. This is what he does for a living, and he had a really good description for me, and every time I had a question, he kind of goes over it, all the answers. So that's kind of how we got to where we are. So we're just figuring things out, making sure that everything works. So he really helped us out, great painter and great bodyman. So now let's get into this. So we're gonna be starting, first thing, I had OSPHO on here. And obviously there has to be some prep for that. So usually what happens, I gotta take the lacquer thinner, and lacquer thinner takes down the acidity because OSPHO is an acid, it's phosphoric acid. And once it's all cured, ready to go, after about 24 hours to 72 hours, it's good to use the lacquer thinner. But we don't need that because I already did that part, so that part's done. The next part is actually the prep in terms of the washing. So really want this thing to be as clean as possible and sanded and whatnot. So the next part is to actually sand this one more time. So I'm gonna be using 120 grit. I'm gonna run across the whole car. It doesn't matter what I'm painting here. I just want the surface to be scuffed up. And then once that's done, then I take our prep ball, any sort of wax and grease remover, and really go over this thing. I've gotta make sure this thing's clean. Even though OSPHO is supposed to stop rust, it's been like 6 months since I did this, so it did appear in some areas. If you look closely, you can see rust in some areas. So obviously I removed the big parts of rust that you saw earlier. However, for very fine rust, I'm gonna be just using the prep ball and just a scuff pad like this, and most of it comes off. Now, if there is microscopic rust, it's not the end of the world because the epoxy primer will stop it. Even if you sand something like this, you already have rust forming microscopically, so you might not see it, but it's there. So if it's just a little bit of rust, as long as the epoxy primer is thick enough, it should be okay. Just don't want any loose stuff, so we're gonna do our best. So now I'm just gonna grab my 120 grit sandpaper and just kind of scuff up the whole surface. Now I'm scuffing up the whole car because I'm gonna be doing everything in here. That's including the roof. So I had painted this part up here already in some areas, and I kind of half finished it. And I'm gonna be doing something that's kind of a risk, but I will be scuffing up this because this is the paint I thought I was gonna have in the whole car, but that's not the case anymore. And the primer on the roof, if you wait more than 5 days after primer, you've got to make sure you scuff it up with a 120 grit, otherwise the epoxy will not adhere as well. So can't do a second coat on that until it's been scratched up. So on top of working inside here, we're also gonna be working in the trunk, so we're gonna be scuffing that area up. We're getting it ready for primer and Bondo, and in the areas we did prime, like the outer wheelhouse, we'll be scuffing those up as well so we can put another coat on. There we go, car's all sanded, ready to go on the next stage. You know, the part that always amazed me about this project is it's no matter how long you think something's gonna take, it always takes way longer than you expect. So I end up sanding the entire inside of the car, in here, and the trunk, and it took me 4 hours. You know, after all this sanding we've done and repairs and this, everything takes so much time. You kind of get to the point where you're like, oh man, this is grueling, and then it's really easy to want to start, you know, chopping things and taking shortcuts, and that's where the mistake will come in if we do that. I can't allow that to happen. Reason being that there's been so much effort put into this. It's, you know, it's mostly preparation, like 80-90% preparation. If we screw up the preparation and this starts failing over time, what a waste of time that would be, right? My goal is to never touch the bodywork in this again. We can change parts over time, but I want this thing to outlive me. You know what I mean? I really do. So that's what I'm gonna do. I think that's the thing. When you're doing something yourself, you might as well use good materials and put in maximum effort. You know, when I was growing up, my dad's favorite saying was, good enough, or temporary, right? That's all I grew up with, temporary, oh, it's good enough. There was a lot of that. Now, mind you, we grew up really poor, so we didn't have much to work with, so we just kind of kept things going however we could. So I totally understand that mentality, but the frustrating thing about that was I found us always working on things because we fix one thing and then we go to fix something else, and the other thing would break down, or, you know, it'd have to be worked on again. It was just constant. So I think when you're doing a project like this, I think it's worth taking the time to wait to get the materials, to put in good materials and good quality and put in the effort so that you don't have to do it again, because otherwise you're just wasting your time. So another saying I heard recently in the last few years was perfect is good enough. And when I heard that, I was like, I like that. I like it because I always strive for perfection because I'm kind of a perfectionist, but I'm less than perfect. So whatever I get is good enough. And so that saying really like, it means a lot to me. I think that's what you should do. If you're doing something, go for perfect, go the best you can. You know, you might get like 98%, 95, you might get less, and whatever you get is what you get. But you tried for perfection, but whatever you got, it was good enough. I think that's an awesome mantra to live by. For sure what I do on this car. When I restored my Jeep, my Cherokee a couple of years ago, I put so many years of work into it, and a lot of that stuff is just falling apart. We're talking single stage paints, so paints that don't have a hardener. That stuff is just junk. It's not worth using on a car. It's gotta have a hardener or it's not worth using. The next stage is, I do have still a little bit of surface rust, so I'm gonna be using the Prep All by Clean Strip. I really like this stuff. It actually works really well. I'm pretty happy with it. I kind of just bought it to try it because I was using Eastwood pre-painting prep, which I'm still using. But that was working really well, so I'm gonna use that along with a scuff pad, and that just will remove any sort of rust that's still on. And I'm not gonna do the whole car right now because we still have to clean it afterwards, so there's no point. But what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take this stuff and I'm gonna put it everywhere we have our weld seams, everywhere we're putting in fiberglass. So we're putting in fiberglass in all the areas where there's flex, all on the floor here. So anywhere structural. So that's what I wanna do. So I have to clean it up first before I put the stuff on so that we have the best adhesion possible. So that's what we're gonna do. All right, so that's what we're working with. We're gonna be working over here. However, you can see a bit of rust here. I actually wanna test it out to see if the rust will come off or if it's gonna stay, because I'm not 100% sure, so I probably should try it out before we move on. Yeah, let's just see if this works at all. Okay. Yeah, that doesn't come off at all. Let's try the scuff pad. Okay, let's wet it down, and now try the scuff pad. Oh yeah. Okay, so it works a little better. For sure, that's what we gotta do, so it'll work out for sure. It won't be perfect, but it'll be good enough. All right, now let's work on this part here. That's looking nice and healthy to me. Very silver, I like it. All right, all of our joints are all prepared here. So one thing I also wanted to mention, I should have mentioned this a long time ago, when I was doing my floor pans, where I actually cut and the reasoning for that. So I didn't cut very low, I actually cut higher. And the reason I cut higher was in case this should fill with water, the water is not sitting on the joint. So I am gonna be putting fiberglass, which is supposed to be waterproof, but I'm not 100% sure if it would be over a long period of time. Mind you, if I have water in here, I got a whole set of problems, so I guess it doesn't matter in the end. But still, I put it a little higher than I normally, would, I guess you could say. And that way, if water gets in, it sits and then sits here. Hopefully, doesn't destroy my car as quickly. But anyways, I'm gonna get this out now. I'm gonna mix it up. I'm just gonna follow the instructions. It says basically 3 centimeters for a golf ball size amount. So I'm just gonna mix that up and start applying it. I don't know how much a golf ball size is. All right, it says here, for a golf ball size about, do 3.17 centimeters of hardener. That is a really arbitrary number. Like, how do you even calculate that? All right, here's our pancake golf ball. 3 centimeters, something like that. 3.17. I don't know. Let's do a little dab more just in case. I really don't know. I'd rather have more than not enough. Have used fiberglass before, and I know one thing about this stuff, it dries really fast, so you gotta move quick. All right, since I'm not an expert at this, I'm pretty much just winging it, but I'm gonna treat this like drywall mud. Less is more, just a little dab. Don't want a lot at all. Probably look pretty crappy for the first time, but whatever. Yeah, it looks crappy, that's okay. Not so perfect is good enough. Mind you, I am going to sand this down, so really just getting it on is kind of the goal at this point. All right, I'm just going to go at it. Alrighty then. Well, I really regret bringing the word perfect into a conversation because this is less than perfect and it's already gone hard on me. Most of this is wasted. I can see why you should work with such small amounts. That is pretty crappy. Looks horrible, actually. This is starting to remind me when I started welding on this thing. Absolutely horrible. A lot more sanding than I want to do, but it is hard to work with. It is not easy. Mind you, my welds are not as flush as they can be. I did sand them better underneath because I know that's visible. Here, I kept it a little bit raised because I didn't want to burn through it because it's not exactly perfect. So, yeah, it's not it's not going to be perfect. That's sure. It's going to be good enough though. I think I'm going to just keep going. I'm going to go all the way around, keep doing this stuff and putting it on over and over and over until it's all done. This is not going to be as easy as it looks. That's for darn sure. All right, so we've concluded putting on the fiberglass, and it's a little thick, not gonna lie. Actually, it's super thick. I wasn't expecting to be that difficult. It is fiberglass after all. It's pretty hard to use. It is not super smooth. There's gonna be quite a bit of sanding here. As much as I try to make it thin, it just, you know, you don't do this for a living. You come out with a crappy job like this, so that's what it's gonna be. Now mind you, I'm not trying to make it look perfect. The whole point of this is to fill all the pinholes that I missed with the welder, because I missed holes, and just try to somewhat smooth it out. So I did the best I could, right? It's gonna be under carpet anyways, but what I'm gonna do next is spend all the time sanding it down as flat as we possibly can, and hopefully it'll look better than this. I have no idea, but right now it's not very encouraging, is it? I will say this much, later on in the areas where I welded at the end was much easier than at the beginning. So that area in the front there with my first welds, that was horrible. The gaps and everything, really hard to make that look flat. Plus the contour of this whole floor is already difficult to work with as it is, especially on the inside corners. So kind of is what it is, but doing a good job welding is definitely worth doing. Yeah, you could save yourself a lot of trouble. That area over there where I was doing the spot welds and whatnot, that was pretty easy to fill in. It won't look too bad. But yeah, around the corners here, that's a different story. Susie. It's the following day. Everything has dried, hardened. I'm ready to start doing some sanding. Got some tools here today, a little bit different than what I've used before, but we're gonna try them out. Still have my air belt sander, which I don't predict to use too much, with a 240 grit, so it's really fine. And then I got this guy right here, 90-degree die grinder, so we're gonna try that out with a little strip disc. You can change these off, they just spin off and put new ones on, so it's pretty cool. I have 36 grit, which is pretty aggressive, but we'll try it out. And then I just have a random orbital sander, so slap on a thing on the bottom here and we'll try it out. So let's just get started, see what works. sanding's all finished, and I gotta tell you, I'm a little surprised. It came out a little bit better than I expected. Now, this is not meant to be a show car, and this is just under the carpet, so it's just a matter of having it flat, really. And at the same time, I can still touch it up later if I want with filler, because there are some other areas. The areas I didn't touch, I'm gonna use filler in the future, but that's not the goal right now. The goal is just to get the car sealed so it doesn't keep rusting. Anyways, turned out pretty good. So what I'm gonna do now is start cleaning. I'm gonna start from the top and go down. So in the areas where I have primer or other paint, I'm gonna be using just Windex. Can't use these two products, so I'll start taking the paint off. So I am gonna be painting over the primer, and I'm gonna be painting over something we already painted, the chassis black. I know that's paint. A lot of people would say don't paint over paint already, and I've already sanded that before and I've done it. I'm just gonna risk it. I know maybe it's a risk, but this is gonna be open for a long time. If it starts peeling and falling off, I can fix it. You know what I mean? This is gonna be open for a long time before I put any interior in. Whatever, not the end of the world. Anyways, so I'm gonna use the Windex, and I'm just gonna use a combination of this Eastwood pre-painting prep and the prep all, and just go around. I don't wanna touch any of the body filler with this stuff, which is why I'm using the can in some areas that are larger, and I'm using this in areas on the ground. So that's what I'm just gonna do. All right, folks, so this is it. Car's clean, she's ready for paint. And I don't really know how to say this other than I can't even explain to you how nervous I am right now. For me, this is not just painting a car. This is a full year of work on this thing, hundreds of hours. I don't know how much time I spent on it. I've lost track, and it's been an insane amount of work, cutting and grinding and stripping and removing and all this stuff for the first time, doing all this stuff I've never done before. And it's all come down to this. Time to put the paint on and start covering all those flaws. All that prep work, making sure everything is as perfect as possible, comes down to this. So I really hope everything goes well. I've never put epoxy primer with a gun on before. I'm gonna be using a sprayer. We're using Eastwood epoxy primer, and I am beyond nervous right now. Like, I'm actually kind of shaking because I really don't want to screw anything up here. I put so much time and work into this car, and so many blood, sweat, and tears, you know. You're doing this, sometimes this takes many years to get to this point. And in my case, it's a year full time, which is a hell of a lot of work, but we're here now. All right, let's go show you guys what we're working with. So what I got here, first of all, I'm gonna be trying an electric spray gun. So I bought this thing at a local store. It's called Princess Auto. It's about a $100 gun. It was on sale for 50 bucks. It comes with 2 batteries, just like this. I figured to myself, if this thing comes with 2 batteries, it might be a good idea, you know? And at the same time, I have another sprayer that's air powered. But the problem is, like, when I use that hose, I just feel water inside, and it just makes me really nervous to use. So I'm gonna try this, but if it doesn't work, we'll use that. So that's what we're gonna do. I'll show you what we got in here. We got some, we got some extra goodies here. Oh, check that out. So we are gonna be doing some seam sealing as well. I bought this at a local Eastwood dealer. These guys are called GP Racing, and they're on the Quebec side in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu. And yeah, they sent us some extra stuff. Check it out. They sent us the brushable seam sealer, which we've used on the quarter panels. This is great stuff. We will be using this along with the other seam sealer, and I haven't seen this one before. That's pretty cool. I didn't even know that was available. That fast curing, paintable in 30 minutes. That sounds like something I need, so I'm gonna use this as well. That's really cool of them to send that to us. Let's see what else we got in here. So normally the Eastwood comes in a gallon. However, they didn't have a gallon, so they gave me a bunch of quarts. So this is what we got. So this is the primer. And with each container of primer, we have something known as a catalyst. The catalyst is what makes it harden, essentially. Epoxy primer, there it is. And there we go. So that's the activator, and that's the epoxy primer. So it says 1-to-1 part. So that's pretty simple. That shouldn't be hard to mix. So we'll mix it in a separate container, and then we'll put it into our paint container. So I don't actually want to put these together in the same thing. I'm going to actually use separate containers. So that's cool. And yeah, that's pretty exciting. Another thing is the primer itself, I did not pick black, I picked gray. And the reason I picked gray is because with gray, it's much easier to see what you're doing. And later on when we're doing body work, this is more for the outside, using something called guide coat. The guide coat is black, so it basically shows you all your dips and valleys and whatnot. So working with gray is much easier, at least for the outside, but I'm still gonna do it for the inside and the bottom because I'm gonna probably paint the car satin black on the bottom and on the inside. That's what I'm thinking. So if I go gray, I know I won't miss anything. So that's what we're gonna do. Let's mix it up. Yeah, I'm all suited up. Epoxy is really bad for you, pretty toxic. So I'm gonna be wearing a full suit, gloves, mask, and yeah, I'm gonna be pretty ready for this. And I got everything ready here. So I got my 2 parts. So I'm gonna be, this takes 1,000 milliliters. And what I'm gonna do is put 500 of each. I'm gonna fill it up pretty much all the way. And then I'm gonna use it. Now I'm gonna actually put it into this first. It doesn't get more Canadian than this, a Tim Hortons coffee tin. So we're gonna put it in there and mix it in there because I don't care what happens to that. I don't wanna mix it in here because should it not mix properly and something come out inconsistent, that's dangerous. So I'm not gonna do that. This is pretty cool. I feel like Bill Nye the Science Guy. There's a 90s throwback for you. Alrighty. Now, before I even combine the 2 contents, I noticed this one's very goopy, so I'm gonna mix it in here just by itself. Oh yeah, look at that. That looks much better now. Let's combine the 2 elements. I'm just gonna mix this, get it ready to go, put my safety gear on, and I'm just gonna get started. I have no advice for applying it because I've never put it on before. Throw it on. Following day, and to say I'm happy would be quite the understatement. This turned out freaking awesome. I can't believe how good it turned out. Honestly, I thought it'd be much worse than this, and in some areas can't even really see the welds as much as I thought it would, and that's pretty cool. I'm happy with it. So as good as this car turned out, there was actually one failure, one pretty big failure. The paint we did up there failed. That's right, it's all peeling off, it's coming off, and I can actually see the layers of primer underneath. So it's just a lesson. You know, I'm gonna show you my mistakes. I wasn't sure if it was gonna work or not. We tried it, it failed. That means everywhere we had Eastwood chassis black has to come off. Yeah, that's something we'll do in the spring. I'm not really in a rush right now, it's all good. The funny part is the primer's still underneath, so it kind of did me a favor because I really regret putting on the Eastwood chassis black. But anyways, you're gonna make mistakes, so lesson learned there, do not paint over paint. It's not gonna work out. That's a fail, but that's okay. Honestly, considering that's the only problem, not really a big deal. The roof looks really good and everything looks good. So yeah, I think it's time to move on to seam sealer. That looks pretty good. Ready to go. So I actually spent the time with a brush going through inside the cowl, firewall inside everything, and just painting it all. Any place I missed, as well as inside the trunk. There were a couple places I missed just because they were hard to get to. Now it's time for the seam sealer. Now it is dry where we're doing our seams, so we're gonna be doing a couple different ones. So we have a bunch of different projects, and I'll show you exactly which ones we're using and why. So this is what we're working with. First of all, we have this cheap stuff here. This is AC Delco 3M seam sealer. So this is the main stuff. This is really good stuff. Super expensive. You gotta go real quick. cures very fast, but it's extremely waterproof. This is for all our high water areas, low points. This stuff they gave us from GP Racing, pretty cool. And then the last one is the brushable seam sealer, which we'll be using quite a bit. This one's paintable in 60 minutes. So, you know, they all got their perks and whatnot. They're actually all really good. So it's just a matter of getting started, picking what you want, and let's get going. When I first got this, these things were just loaded with goop. So I'm gonna fill it with this cheap stuff, just because I don't really care about, you know, this stuff. This is just backer. This is kind of the automotive equivalent of putting drywall behind your shower, but then putting Curdy membrane on the front. I don't know how much actual value is in filling these up all the way, but they were filled up before, so might as well fill them up again. Now it's time for the brushable stuff, and I'm literally using a little brush, but different tools depending what it is. This is the last chance I have at doing my firewall. I've already gone through that part so many times, but I don't want any leaks, so now after putting the primer on, I could see little pinholes here and there, so in case the water does come in, which is always possible, and make sure that never happens. All right, now that the cowl is all sealed, I'm pretty happy with it there. I'm going to take the brushable and I'm just gonna do all the areas I wanna do. I'm gonna do the areas up here because they're not sitting up there on the firewall. I'm not gonna do this part of the tunnel because I know this is gonna be cut apart to put in this 6-speed. Every time I've seen people do that, it's always messed up, so I don't think it's worth sealing that. So I'm gonna do that. I'm just gonna seal the whole inside the car in terms of what I want with this stuff and move on to the 3M. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the caulking, I'm gonna go around the windows in the areas up there and around the bottoms here near the rocker panels because I think it's gonna be a good product for that. Otherwise, I'm just gonna grab my 2-part epoxy, put it in the applicator, the 3M, and just go around this thing. I'm just gonna go, it sets really fast so I don't have much time, and that's about it. Pull the tape off as you go. All right, seam sealers all in. Ended up using all the seam sealers. Actually, all 3 of them were quite useful. And if you're wondering why it's pitch black outside, it's because it's pretty late. I've been going for a long time. Man, the last 2 days have been absolutely brutal. Very long, grueling days, but I wanted to do it before this has to be scuffed up again in order to add the primer. So I just wanted to have all the priming done. It's now ready for the next coat. Everything's dry now, so I'm gonna do one more coat and it's finished. And at the time of filming this, winter is just around the corner, so that's why I've been doing this, because all the hand sanding, it takes so much time, and then the rust starts coming back, so I wanted to get it all sealed. It's gonna be sealed, it's not gonna be finished. There's still a lot of work to do. We're still gonna be fixing a bunch of stuff. We're gonna be doing some final touches. We're gonna be putting some filler on the dashboard and different places like that, underneath the car, all this kind of stuff. So really, this is just sealing the car with epoxy and seam sealer. So now I'm just gonna take my gun, do all my final coat of primer, and then we could take a look, see what this bad boy looks like. We'll see you on Monday. It's the following day, and I couldn't be happier. You know, for a first timer, I'm pretty surprised of how it looks like. Hell, even in the areas where I use that fiberglass filler, it turned out pretty good. You could barely see the weld seams in some of these areas. I haven't even done the final coat of filler yet. This was just a rough coat to make sure that water doesn't penetrate. But there's still a lot more to do. We still have to do the dashboard. There was a weld seam there. Underneath the firewall, there's still areas. And in the trunk, there's still a lot of areas we have to do with the filler to make sure it looks as good as possible. But that's not for today. The goal today was just to seal the car before the winter, so I'm pretty ecstatic. This is a good project. I think it's time to move on to the next one.